Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Replimat, a Star Trek chatcast in which two people go through Star Trek DS9 in chronological, episode order. One, a seasoned traveler, that'd be me, and one who's going on the pilgrimage for the first time.
That's me, Tim.
That is Tim. Today we will be discussing episode 6 of season 2, Melora, which was first transmitted on the 31st of October 1993, spooky, with a teleplay by Evan Carlos Summers and Stephen Baum and Michael Peller and James Crocker, based on a story by Evan Carlos Summers, directed by Rick Colby, or Winrick Ernest. There's another name, Colby. He has a long name. Apparently he's from the Netherlands, so I'm almost certainly pronouncing his surname wrong. Maybe it's Kolb, maybe it's Colby, maybe it's Kolba. I do not know. But hey, if you're from the Netherlands, you speak Swedish? Would it be Swedish
Dutch.
in the Netherlands? Dutch. Close. I don't know such things. Anyway, if you speak Netherlandish, then do please correct us, because we both do not know. But I've always said coal, but it probably isn't. But it might be. I don't know. Anyway, those were the, as Tim said last week, the formalities out of the way. Yes, I rewatched the episode earlier just to remind myself. So, Tim.
Andy.
How has your week been? Do tell.
Our regular viewer will be by now seriously depressed if I continue to say that I've had a very stressful, busy week and my life is very dull. Essentially, I have had a very busy and stressful week. My life is very dull, I'm afraid, but I have managed to do some entertaining things from time to time. I watched a couple of episodes of Star Wars Bad Batch. Have you seen any Bad Batch?
Sorry, I muted myself and I pressed the wrong button.
You muted yourself.
I did, so I wasn't interrupting you because I'm doing my best. Plus, you would have heard me doing this.
You are the person behind me in the cinema opening a packet of minstrels. Yes, go on.
Popcorn everywhere. I have started the Bad Batch. I think I've done a few episodes, but it wasn't grabbing me because it's a bit too much Clone Warsy at the time. It was okay. I much prefer Ahsoka, but I will go into that when we get to me.
Right.
Please do continue. I shall mute myself again now.
Enjoy your biscuits. Yes, I watched the first series of Bad Batch much earlier in the year, possibly further ago than that, and started the second series, and then just stuff got in the way. And because if I'm working from home, it's the episodes are about 25 minutes long, so they're a convenient length to watch at lunchtime. So there was a couple of days this week where I actually managed to get a lunch break for a change, and I thought, I want to just kind of forget about work for a bit. So I watched a couple of episodes of Bad Batch, and they were really good. It was series 2 episodes 3 and 4. And what I liked about them most was that they didn't try and cram in everyone. They just focused on a couple of characters, and one of them just told a story about Crosshair. So it was kind of like from the baddie side, and that was really good. So I like those two a lot. But apart from that, I'm afraid my evenings are generally just spent falling asleep after putting the kids to bed. So it's not the most exciting life. It's not going to continue. If any viewers out there are concerned, it's not going to continue like this forever. I will actually eventually reach an end to this kind of this section of work, and my life will miraculously open up again into a world of sort of a Renaissance world of art and music and theatre and film and television. And actually, that's a point. I have this week listened to a couple of Pet Shop Boys EPs that I didn't realise were out there.
Exciting.
One
That's
of them.
no sin.
I see what you did there. Yeah. There was one was something it's like My Laundrette or something like that, which is it appears to be a soundtrack, I think, possibly to a short film or something. It's only about 20 minutes long, and there's some brilliant stuff on that. So yeah, I've jumped on a little Pet Shop Boys train again. So that's really good. So that's something that's brought a smile to my face this week. So Andy, what's brought a smile to your face this week?
Well, where to begin? That sounded a bit ominous, didn't it? Or something.
It does sound very ominous and threatening.
Okay.
And
you were family friendly-ish. Ish. Actually, I make sure I press the not for kids thing when I upload this, because it does tend to be the occasional swear.
Is this going to be sordid?
Sordid. I'm not going to go sordid. No, I'll do my best.
Okay. That's all right. Only I've not long had my lunch.
Well, we'll wait till we get to like season 6 and that, when things get a bit more grim in this series, and then we'll see. My week has been work, of course, and the drama continues at work. Well, nobody seems to be in charge properly at the moment, but that's a whole other thing. Outside of work, because that's, I would want to say, more interesting, but obviously, as I've mentioned a few times, when I get home at night, there's really not much night left. But we've been starting a bit later this week, which has been nicer. So, to be fair, I haven't actually filled my early mornings, early afternoons with much other than watching YouTube this week, because I've happened upon this channel, which I think I will pop in a link up there, for this guy called Dominic Noble, who does lots of reviews of books, and then he does comparisons between the book and what he calls lost in translation, and what they keep in the book in a film and what they don't add, and all that kind of stuff. And I got caught up because he's on him bitching, and I absolutely agree, with E.L. James, who of course wrote the 50 Shades series, which, as I'm sure you knew, started as Twilight fanfic. Yes. And talking about 2 non-50 Shades books. And based on what he's saying, her writing ability never improves. I mean, it's never good anyway, but it does not get any better. But the videos are really good. And then I have to go and watch his eviscerations of the Twilight books. And more than once, his bottom line tends to be, "Fuck you, Maya," because of her just god-awful writing. And it's great fun to watch. So I've been watching way too much of that in the past week. I think probably is way too much, actually. I have watched a bit more Only Fools. I've reached the point yesterday where the show was originally ended, which would be Time on Our Hands, I think the episode was called, which is the one in which they find actually Michael Jaston, because he does appear, not that guy behind that bar like I thought, found a little antique watch in Dale's garage, which turns out to be worth £6 million. It's a really good episode, actually. I mean, you get to the end where they literally walk off into the sunset because everything changes around them. This time next year, we'll be billionaires.
Where
and I'm like watching it. Yeah, absolutely. I'm like, I don't remember seeing the ones after. I may have done, but I certainly don't recall watching them originally.
I haven't.
But I do remember this. And it's a great episode because it's part of the Christmas trilogy of 96.
I was going to say, it must have been something like mid-90s, yeah.
Yeah. And they don't come back then for another 4 or 5 years. So it's that trilogy, the whole one, the heroes and villains, where they do the whole Batman and Robin thing, and then it's the whole one where it ends with Cassandra as a miscarriage. So it's a really, it's funny. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a dark stuff going on underneath all this comedy. But you got Dell saying to Rodney, "You've got to be strong for Cassandra. You've got to be strong for her. You can deal with your grief later. Be strong for Sandra." As soon as they walk into the hospital ward, as soon as Dell sees Cassandra, he's just like, because he just can't contain his pain and hurt, knowing how much his brother's about to suffer. And Rodney's like, "Okay, Dell," and I'm just like, it's good because good drama is balanced with good comedy really well if people know what they're doing. And of course, the last episode has them dealing with the consequence of that, where Dell pretends to get themselves stuck in the lift with his claustrophobia, just so that Rodney can sort of deal with his problems by helping Dell deal with his, and it turns out the whole set. You, oh, I love you. But yeah, it's a really great, and I'm like, this really should have been the end. They should have just left it there, because it really was the perfect way to wrap up a show that had been going by that point for, I think, 13 years or whatever. It's like, yeah, I mean, this is it. This was all done. Anything else? I mean, I don't know. The next, I think there's another 3, 4 maybe specials that come back. I think it's 3. And again, I don't think I've seen them before, but I do wonder if it's going to feel like, why did you bother? It just feels all pointless extra, really. Because it's like they've reached the point where they were aiming for. They became millionaires. They got the life they wanted. No more struggling,
Yeah, it doesn't need to be any more to the story than that. So,
well, no. But of course, it's that popular, then naturally they're going to bring it back. Which does make me wonder, it seems inevitable that at some point they're going to do another special. Because they're both still around. All the main actors are still around. Obviously not not Granddad, Uncle Albert.
Yeah, not Buster Merrifield. Yeah.
And obviously the creator is not around anymore, but I wouldn't put it past them just doing a one-off. Although I was researching, and apparently David Jason and Lyndhurst don't really talk anymore. Which, they don't explain why, but Jason has said that he said it's sad that they don't. But he doesn't. But no one seems to know why or what happened between them. But I suppose it can happen when you're around each other all the time so much. Sometimes little things can happen and suddenly boom. But yeah, so I did that. Obviously, been doing Sobok H. Did a bit more Supernatural, but as I did that, I squeezed quite a bit in, really, didn't I? In my week of doing nothing. And I'm still reading. And very much enjoying City of Vengeance, which is the David Bishop book I mentioned last week.
Okay.
But I'm also pondering, because I ponder. There's always loads of classic books that you kind of remember reading as a kid, but not necessarily the entire series. But it's stuff that you think, maybe it's about time I read them anyway, because, we're not getting younger, and these things are classic for a reason. I mean, Tim knows where this is going because, well, if you see the outtake, you'll know why it's going too. So I've got a choice between, I'll do them both, but it's a case of which shall I do first. I've already spoken to Sean, like I just mentioned off camera, as it were, and he suggested the larger of the two collections. Well, I say larger. One of them's a lot thinner in terms of individual books, so maybe word count, they probably pan out roughly the same. Maybe. So the choice is, and viewer, because I know there's more than one of you really. It would be interesting for you guys to let me know what you think I should do first. I might hold it off for a couple of days to decide, because I'm still doing City of Vengeance anyway. But the choice is between either the full series of this, The Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum, or what could the alternative be? Any ideas?
Chronicles of Narnia.
Yes, it
Magician's
is.
Nephew. Oh, I was right. Oh, that was a guest viewer.
I've had this box set of books for so long,
Yeah, we've
and
got a
I've
few. We've got
kept
a
them
couple
because the
kicking around the
cover
house.
art on these are just superb. The cover
You need
on
to
each
move it more
particular
towards your
collection,
face.
and I'm trying to get away
Yeah.
from the light. Whoop!
Oh,
So
okay.
obviously you've got the arc lights in, and that'll block half the
Yep.
bloody.
No, can't see. Yeah, can't see that at all. Wow.
Well,
In fact,
I can see
the
because
way
I've
you
got a
hold.
wider picture.
Right. I was going to say the way the light's reflecting off it makes it look like Lord of the Rings. But there we go.
And ironically, there are rings on there. See,
Yes. There are. Yeah, 3.
the
So
artwork's fantastic on this.
I haven't read those for
So,
years.
and
I've read
again,
them. I've read them all a couple of times. They were great, but I
I
certainly haven't
seem to
read
be out of
any of
focus
the.
a bit.
I haven't read any
There we
of
go.
Wizard of Oz books. So
Yeah, again, I don't think I've actually read them. Obviously, I know the films, but I don't think I've actually read the books. Narnia books, I certainly read some of them when I was a kid.
yeah,
Like Voyage of the Dawn Treader. I do wonder if I actually read it, or it was
that's my
just a
favourite.
title just stayed in my head. But
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure I must have read it. But either way, I just feel it's time to it's good to read classics occasionally, and the 2 series that I think I do need to read fully either way. I can't quite decide
yeah.
if I've got a hair in my eye or if it's just the light reflecting because I've got the thing in front of me. Could be
Oh,
either thing.
okay.
Anyway, so that's been my week, which has taken up about half an hour to tell you.
Right.
So,
So,
shall we discuss this episode?
shall we Melora?
Since let's Melora on, shall we? We'll take
Let's
a
Melora
Melora through
on.
Deep Space Nine. Okay, Tim,
Yes.
Mr. Newbie
Newbid.
on the Pilgrim. For I am the seasoned traveller. You must be the Pilgrim.
Yes, indeed.
You may open up this discussion, and I'm going to mute myself because I'm going to drink coffee now. So, please ramble on.
Oh, we'll ramble on for it. Right. Well, I guess the first thing that struck me was was that Daphne Ashbrook was playing Melora, and so I saw her straight away and thought, "Ooh, I know you." And
Question.
yes,
Did you recognise her before her name appeared, or were you like
no,
you look
I
familiar?
recognised her, and as I was about to say, my brain automatically did this annoying thing of, where do I know her from? I know that face. And so my immediate thought was, she's been in something else Star Trek related that I've seen, and I was so I was concentrating on the episode, but I was also distracted slightly by that, and it was only when her name came up in the credits, and I thought, oh yeah, of course, Daphne Ashbrook. So Doctor Who TV movie 1996. And immediately then I remembered that one of the things, when she was announced as being in the Doctor Who TV movie, one of the things that was said was, oh, she's been in Star Trek. And I'd never seen the episode or the character that she played, so I had no idea what her involvement was, only that she had some sci-fi cult TV grounding already. So I saw that, and so yeah, I obviously had to get over that. It took me a while actually to get comfortable with this episode, and I think it's because I was immediately concerned that it was with its message, and because you've obviously got this thing about about like disabled people who need to use a wheelchair and so forth, and that kind of sort of ableist view of, let us help you. And
May I interrupt you
and the
just briefly?
Yeah.
Because I figured I certainly was going to bring this up, so I'm glad you did already. So while I was watching, I did a little bit of research on this, and the writer who did, well, the guy who came up with the story and one of the writers of the script, Summers, Aaron, whatever his name was, Carlos. He apparently is a wheelchair user. And this idea of having a wheelchair-bound character or a disabled character of some description apparently was in the original brief for the show. Originally, it was going to be the science officer, which eventually became Dax, because they realized it was just too prohibitive to do regularly based on the sets and whatever, which they kind of incorporate in this story. So this Carlos dude, who I believe he's a staff writer, or at least he was working at Paramount, whatever, at the time. And he saw this on their board of ideas they wanted to do since season 1. And apparently he had a meeting with Michael Piller and mentioned that, this is a good idea, but let me write it because I am a wheelchair user, so I can give a unique perspective on this that you guys may not necessarily get, because obviously you can only interpret what you're seeing outside, but you need to be in there to get it. So continue.
Yeah. And so, I thought this is, and a lot of the episode seems to be about how it's almost the culture of the society when DS9 is set doesn't account for people who are not fully mobile. By themselves, as it were, on their own with their own legs or whatever. So you've got that the sort of awkward situation where I'm thinking it's good to address this issue. You seem to be going along this sort of ableist route of let us help you. We can move around easily. Let us help you. And then you've got someone who's a wheelchair user who is almost being overly belligerent about how they need to have their own freedom. And so I was uncomfortable about where it was going, because it didn't seem to be a particularly inclusive. The arguments didn't appear to be particularly inclusive, and Melora was obviously a very difficult character, understandably so. But her whole attitude towards other crew members and other Federation operatives seemed very. I just thought it seemed like quite career limiting, as it were. There's a difference between sort of not taking any shit from anyone and actually having the wrong kind of attitude when you're speaking to colleagues and senior officers and stuff as well. So I was wondering where it was all going, and the strongest thing I was taking away from it was that there were, outside of being able to teleport places, and so basically doing without the need for a wheelchair or whatever, there didn't seem to be any adaptation at all within the makeup and design of Deep Space Nine to allow for anyone that wasn't, ambulatory on their own legs. And yeah, I don't know. It was. I think this is the sort of episode actually that I'd probably be more comfortable with on the second viewing, because I know where it's going, and I can relax into it a bit more. But I found this quite uncomfortable viewing at times. And then what seemed to happen was when Melora kind of relaxed, when they had that confrontation scene with Bashir, and he basically says, this is what you're doing. This is what, and she suddenly sort of accepts that I suppose, accepts the truth of what he's saying and mellows. At that point onwards, the episode kind of relaxed a bit with her presumably relaxing. I suppose there's a nice moment again. Bashir stopped being kind of creepy doctor, and is has suddenly become a much more acceptable character. I think in my eyes, and it was good to see that he was that his, I suppose, like charm offensive or whatever was reciprocated, and it's nice to see a little bit of something on that side. Again, I suppose it could be argued that was that abusive position from a doctor. I mean, he went to great lengths to state that he wasn't her doctor anymore, and was now her colleague or a friend or whatever. So I suppose there must have been an awareness of that at the back of their minds as well. And so yeah, that was good. And also when the A and B plots kind of married quite beautifully towards the end as well, with with Quark and his was it Fallet something or other, his friend or not a friend. So all of that just it came together nicely at the end, and it was I think it felt at the end a much more satisfying episode than it looked like it was going to be at the start. Certainly not as brilliant throughout as the recent episodes that we've seen, but still, in the end, a good episode. And also, Melora's decision to not continue with that treatment as well, I think, was the right decision that sends the right messages out there to people, because it's all they're all messages and stories that people can apply to everyday life, that the everyday life that we lead anyway. And it's about I think it's about just being kind of true to who you are, and everyone wishes for something, and it may be that what you wish for isn't necessarily a good thing. Is, I suppose, like on Red Dwarf, when Crichton always dreams of becoming a human, and in the episode when he does become a human, he suddenly realizes actually this isn't what I thought it was going to be. There's no zoom function, and so he wants to be a mechanoid again. So it's it's that that kind of thing. But I was worried at the start about the messages or the arguments it was putting forward and the messages it was giving, and by the end, I think I was more comfortable, more satisfied with the messages it was putting across.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I can see where you're coming from. I kind of find this is one of these episodes which, like all of this now, I've seen multiple times. My view on it tends to change a lot. Like you said, on repeat viewing, you can see it in a different way because you do know where the story's going. But knowing that the one who came up with the story and was one of the script writers anyway was actually a wheelchair user himself, it makes me judge the episode. It makes me view the episode maybe a bit differently, because when I'm watching it initially, I'm thinking, how are you going to play this out? Which way are you going to go? To me, on the outside, I kind of have to wonder, if I was a wheelchair user, how would I view this? Is this message relating to me or not? But her being Melora being belligerent in the early part of the episode, based on my own experience, not as a wheelchair user, but certainly I remember an instance back in London as a Doctor Who signing, and there was this guy in a wheelchair, and he was a belligerent arsehole, like proper, that whole chip on the shoulder kind of vibe. I'm in a wheelchair, so you need to move out my way, like that. And I expect, yeah, of course, there's going to be people like that. But then equally, you probably have a lot of wheelchair users or anybody of any kind of disability. You kind of get used to people's attitudes towards you. Because I think I had this. What was I talking about the other day? I was talking about something similar. Yeah, I was talking to a friend yesterday or the other day at work, just talking about gender identity and whatnot. Because these are the sort of conversations we have at work, apparently. About people's attitudes when they're going through something compared to the attitude of the person who's only looking in. And you kind of I think you kind of have to, as the person who's got the prejudice aimed at them, you kind of have to sometimes try to understand the outside point of view as well. That they're not people on the outside aren't going to learn unless you teach them. If you've got like me and my leg at the moment, a lot of people, I mean, it's only a passing thing, but it's kind of maybe a wee bit disabled in a sense. It's only so much I can do with my leg at the moment. Hopefully it won't last, but knees will do what they do. And some people, I can just get a sense from them that if they think I'm either milking it or, well, you appear to be walking fine, so why can't you therefore do what you normally do?
Yeah.
But they don't know because they don't feel it.
No.
Literally don't feel it. Like I was explaining to one of the guys at work just about this, saying how externally most of the time I appear to be walking fine, but it's just little things where I can feel the pressure on my knee, and it's not excruciating, but it's painful because you don't realize until you've got an issue with your leg in some way how much pressure you put on your legs just normally.
Yeah.
Until you can feel it, And ditto, I think, for anybody who's got an actual disability that is permanent, I think it's easy on the outside to not say they're faking it, but maybe feel sometimes they're milking it a bit. But equally on the other side, I think sometimes the person with a disability or whatever sometimes has to be more aware that not everybody understands because they can't experience what you're experiencing. So you maybe need to just, in a nicer way, teach them. And that's, in some ways, this episode, I think, does pretty well.
Yes.
The fact that, Melora's got a bit of a chip on the shoulder initially because she's had this attitude thrown at her so much that she does, like you said, overstep the bounds of normality in some ways. Like, for instance, kind of having to go at Ben at Cisco for having a meeting about her without her being there. And then, as he points out, ensign, because you are only an ensign. I'm having a discussion with my senior officers about personnel, which is what I do normally.
Yes.
It's not personally attacking you, So I think this episode does a decent job of making both views come across from the person who's disabled and from the more able-bodied people who may not understand, and the lack of understanding from both sides, I suppose, is more like what I'm saying. I think this episode does a fairly decent job of that. I agree also. I think Bashir, he's slowly as a character turning around now as well.
Yes.
More awareness of himself, and he's definitely growing as a character. I like that scene where he confronts her about belligerence and how he's always attacking people. And then she says something, she goes, just like that, I can't quite decide if you're being charming or if you're attacking me because there's so much the same from you. And like you say, he got to the point where he's like, well, I'm no longer your doctor. I've done my doctor duty to you. That's no longer my duty anymore. I've done what I needed to do. Now I'm just your friend. So he's aware that there's a line. I've now done what my duty, so I'm now no longer your doctor. So I don't have to be bound by this. Whereas, in times past, in season 1, there would have been moments, and there were moments where that line blurred a lot for him, where sometimes he was a bit like, dude, you're her doctor. What are you doing?
That's a bit creepy.
Yeah. And so it's good that he seems to have got to the point where he sees that now. It's an interesting episode. One, like I say, it's my views on it can change with most viewing. I did like the B story. I mean, I think the B story is a bit of a nothing, really. I mean, it is. It's not like overly engaging or very surprising, like the twist where that guy betrays Quark at the end. It's like, well, yeah, of course that was going to. There was nothing. It was just a B plot just to pad out, for the end to get,
just to get them where they need to be, and for Melora to kind of finally make that decision about where she needs to go. Was it Phallic Gill? Was that the guy's?
Yeah, I can't.
I'll tell you what.
Phallic.
Something about that which did again. It was a needless distraction, and it annoyed me a little bit. Exactly. I don't.
Sorry, viewer, you wouldn't have seen that because it'd be the opposite thing. I just did the. I did that thing about that bit that covers his mouth.
Yeah, the bit
because I didn't actually say anything. The camera would have been on Tim,
his
not me.
Chin and his nose.
I say viewer, but also listener, because hot Spotify people, you've been listening to this, not viewing this. So I was just
it's probably not very good to watch.
I was doing an impression of this little weird thing where his nose sort of goes over his mouth to his chin, which.
Yeah. So you look at alien species, and certainly when I look at them, there's all I do look for. One of the first things I look for is, do I think that a species that look like that could have evolved anywhere? And I know there's an infinite universe out there. There's an infinite number of possibilities. Blah blah blah. I had a similar thing watching. Was it Kong Skull Island, where the kind of the baddie giant monsters are the things that are on sort of like 3 pointy legs or something like that. And I looked at those and I thought, I don't understand how anything like that would have evolved, because they don't move properly. It looks like it's a struggle for that thing to be alive.
Well, they'd have to have a very particular environment to evolve in that way, wouldn't it? Because that's what natural selection is, not evolution, but natural selection means you adapt to your surroundings.
Yeah, and they didn't appear to be in that kind of in an environment that favoured, that kind of existence. The guy Quark's friend here, Phallic, whatever his name is, with that thing that joins up his nose to his chin and kind of covers his mouth. You look at that and think, how did a species evolve that doesn't have a full frontal access to its mouth? I mean, he eats something and he pops it in at the side. It's like you want, and then you start thinking, well, what's that thing for? Is it a handle to hold in lovemaking? Is it does it glow or expand or whatever?
You're not getting in there, mate. You're not getting in there.
Because no, is it there to?
I'm so glad I gave it out a warning to this.
to win a mate or something. It's. You go through all the things that you see on David Attenborough programs, and where you got special kind of natural adaptations and stuff. And it's usually involved with either feeding or mating or whatever. And you think, why have you got this, handle there? And I was looking to see because if there was a join that maybe if he opened his mouth wide enough that it would part and you could get food in there. But I found it wholly distracting, thinking, how the hell did his ancestors, come to develop that? How did they eat? And
to be fair, I thought similar when I first. I'm like, what? How does that work? Why?
It's just silly.
I mean, I get you want to be creative in your designs and make new aliens look different to something that we've seen before, of course. But like you say, there's got to be like any kind of world building in fiction. I'm like that too. Like whenever somebody comes up with a parallel reality to whatever, and they just basically do like Star Trek. New Who has done it a lot. Star Trek in more recent years when they do their parallel worlds, they just do any old shit, and you're like, no, they still got some sort of logical, progressive reasoning to it. It can't just be
Otherwise,
anything. There's got to be a
you
reason
can't
why
immediately
these events.
accept it.
Yeah. There's got to be some. You can actually say, right, this is the event that changed it. So logically, this will happen. Ditto alien species. If they've evolved to look like this, like you say, then surely there's got to be some logical reason for it to be. Some environmentally reason, whatever, some interspecies, something. Yeah, it does get distracting, but that's Star Trek. Not the worst thing Star Trek does. So, but yeah, moderately distracting. Yeah.
I'll tell you
what?
another one that I found similarly distracting was in Mandalorian, where in the early episodes where the Ugnaught, and they had they were riding around on these two-legged things with, massive heads, and again, I just I thought, I don't believe in this creature that I'm seeing.
Well, that actually reminds me of I said earlier about watching this guy Dominic Noble on his book review stuff. He was doing a comparison between I think it was Dawn Treader, the book, and the film.
Yeah. Right. There's a lot of changes in that.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's in the book. But certainly the film, you have this thing with these invisible people who turn out to be monopods.
Yeah, no, that's in the book.
Hop around like that. And I'm just watching like the footage that he's showing, and I'm like, what? Why? How? What would make you evolve into such a? It just,
yes.
As a fantasy story, as a book, because ultimately they're just fantasy stories. That's meant to be fairy tales, is what they're meant to be.
Yeah.
That's what C.S. Lewis calls them, they're fairy tales. But still, and I'm all for, in a fairy tale, you can sort of let it run wild, and logic and reason doesn't necessarily need to play a part.
This is true.
But if you're going to adapt it to a film, then the physical world becomes a real issue.
Yeah.
So, he adapted it from the book, and that's fine, but not one of the most. Maybe something they shouldn't have adapted. Because I'm watching, thinking, how? What? Huh? How could that possibly have evolved?
Yeah,
because they're in a normal. They're not like in a very specific environment that needs one leg.
No, that's true.
It's very weird. It's just distracting.
But because they're in an island that's kind of ruled by a magician, and the kind of the slightly odd things that go on in Narnia, anywhere or wherever Narnia is. I never had an issue with those kind of like monopod things in Voyage of the Dawn Treader. But now you mention it, I probably should have, because I suppose
it makes no sense.
It doesn't, but I suppose like this here, I always look on like Chronicles of Narnia and Lord of the Rings as being, because they are fantasy, whereas Star Wars and Star Trek are science fiction. So
the fiction less science.
So less. So you tend not to have that magical aspect, and or if it is there, then it's always put down as advanced science. So that's that. I suppose that's how I've always justified that to myself. But yeah.
No, I get it. That makes sense. But so I can see how that guy's weird extended nose over chin thing is a bit on the distracting side. But what I was going to say about that plot point is it was pretty throwaway. It was just padding, as you say, just to give some sort of a conflict thing for the end, for Melora to have that epiphany where she realizes, actually, no, if I take this away, this is part of who I am. It's an essential part. And the author, the guy who came up with the storyline, he said that was always his end point, where she would refuse it because, it'd be nice if we could cure disabilities and all these kind of things, but the whole point of this message is you'll find a way you are. Because apparently he was bothered by it. There's an episode of TNG season 5, I want to say, which would only been 2 years earlier than this.
Yeah.
It's an episode in which Worf has a spinal injury. And so he basically wants, and they can't do anything about it, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, they do. But during the course of the episode, he wants Riker to assist him in the ritual suicide because he can't be a warrior. Klingons can't, if I can't walk around, what kind of Klingon am I? Blah, 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 blah. And the guy who came up with this idea for Melora, as a wheelchair user, he was very concerned the idea that the story being that being disabled is wrong, it's better to be dead, which is not a great message. I mean, granted, it's a Klingon, so it's not human, so you could just about not let it bother you, but still, the message is the message.
Yeah, definitely.
Even in sci-fi, there's usually a message that's going to relate, hopefully, to the real world, and to people watching it. So he was bothered by that. So that was his end game with this episode. Is always, I want her to come to the point where she's like, no, this is part of who I am now, and it's okay to be this. It's
she needed to be
in this world.
Reminded of what was special about her being her, and how it did have a practical, almost like how it did have a practical use. She had a superpower almost outside of her home world.
But what is good as well is, as we say, it just through the course of events with Julian in particular, it got her to drop the chip on her shoulder that she's obviously developed. Because of her whole life, she's been, her whole life when she left Elasian world.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what they called the actual planet. They just kept saying she's Elasian. I don't think they actually named the planet.
Yeah, Elasia.
Elated, I don't know. What was I saying?
Yeah, but ever since she left home, she'll have had that battle.
She was basically, So essentially, her whole life was, this was who I am. So it's been bam, 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 bam.
So,
it's interesting though, like what you said about how the station obviously wasn't designed with anybody non-abled. But I like that they incorporate that into the actual episode, and they make a point of it. The fact that Cardassians, which does fit on what we know of Cardassians. So obviously, there's a few episodes of Cardassian stuff you haven't seen from Next Gen, and clearly, the idea that disabled, I'm assuming that Cardassians don't actually have people with disabilities. A bit like Romulans, I guess, because there was like another episode of Next Gen where Geordi and a Romulan are trapped on a planet, and the Romulan works out that Geordi's blind without the visor, and he's like, and your parents let you live? Because clearly in Romulus, and I'm guessing ditto Cardassia. So it's interesting. It says in some, the fact that they didn't even think about it says a lot about Cardassia. Plus, and Melora's got a good point. Okay, maybe a few handrails and stuff might be nice and helpful just in general consideration of others. But her point, because obviously somebody designed this, just set designer, in the real world. What was the fucking logic of having these fucking whatever in doorways all the time?
Oh yeah,
they have these
raised bulkheads sort of thing.
What's the logic of that? Where you're constantly, never mind if you're disabled, just able people are going to be, I imagine, tripping over them all the freaking time. I bet you Bashir and his nurses get all kinds of people constantly coming and going, oh, my knee, oh, my ankle, oh, my head, I fell over the freaking doorstep again.
Yeah.
Because they're everywhere. Everywhere. It's just like, what was the logic? Even, Vin Cardassia, what's the common sense of that? But the set designers who come up with this is how Cardassian architecture looks, do they not think, hang on a minute, that just doesn't make any sense? Because even Cardassians, I imagine, certainly young ones, must be tripping over doorways all the time. I mean, I suppose if it's like that wherever you live all the time, constantly, eventually you get used to it. So be used to taking that step eventually.
Maybe.
But it's certainly not going to be helpful for the kids, is it?
Cardassian parents pushing Cardassian babies around in Cardassian prams. Obviously not on
Obviously they
not
don't
on
have
Deep
them.
Space
They
Nine.
must have anti-grav prams, I'm guessing. Or maybe they don't
Maybe.
have prams.
Or just
Maybe they just
a
have
papoose.
that's it, papoose. Maybe that's
Yes,
and
a
that's
pair
where
of
we got it
breasts that
from.
you just did.
No, dear listener, I did not. That is, I am capable of miming a pair of breasts. How very dare you?
I think
Kim does not look convinced.
I think he's
Yeah,
protesting
but
too much. Anyway,
yeah, my whole point of this B plot, what I was going to say, other than the whole where it goes, it did give us some nice, not many, but a few nice little Quark and Odo scenes. I mean, the first one was someone's trying to kill me, and Odo just sort of looks at him, beaming like, that's a shame.
Yeah,
And I'm just laughing. I'm like,
moments.
yeah, every episode is elevated by a nice Odo and Quark scene.
Yes, this
because
is
they
true.
don't have bad scenes between them. You know, the chemistry, and it's just absolutely sparkles, you know. But yeah, but I think we're nearing the hour mark, although slightly less when I've obviously cut the slight bit where I had to pick up a parcel for the outtakes, which wouldn't have taken that long up, but still. Yeah, so I think generally my thought is slightly uncomfortable episode in places, but maybe that's necessary based on the topic. Maybe sometimes uncomfortable. It's good, both for the able and the disabled people, just to confront the prejudice on both sides, I suppose, you know. But I think it does a good job. I think Daphne Ashbrook is very good in this.
She is.
I do know. I remember in an interview, probably in Doctor Who magazine. So maybe she was just saying this because it's Doctor Who magazine. But I do remember her saying that she had much more fun filming Doctor Who than she did Star Trek.
Right.
But that could just because she was in a wheelchair the whole time, and obviously that's not her natural every day. So it's
apart from the time when she was flying.
And she had that thing attached to her head, obviously, the fake forehead, and I hear prosthetics are not the most wonderful thing to be stuck in for like 16 hours a day or whatever. Anyway, but yeah, I think she did a really good job. I think all the regulars were good. Again, I don't think Kira actually had a single line. She was there.
No, she did have. She had one or two lines.
Oh, she did.
One or two lines in the scene with Cisco when they were talking about the sending off whichever runabout it was that Dax and Melora had taken off, and then they were going to follow in the whatever runabout they were going to follow in. But yes, Kira only had one or two lines this week, so
which is fine. You know, she can't hog the limelight every episode. Yeah, no, she can. I wish, but you know,
we've had a couple of.
That's a good thing about Kira's.
A couple of strong Bashir episodes. Two out of the last three that we watched have been quite heavily Bashir episodes.
Yeah, of course.
So presumably he'll go quiet for a little while now, and then we can concentrate on someone else.
We'll have a bit more focus. Next episode is...
Yeah, what have we got next?
I did look this up. Well, it was on the screen. What was it? Hang on. Oh, it's actually a Quark episode, but I'll tell you that in a second. What are your final thoughts on this episode?
So yeah, similarly with you, I thought Daphne Ashbrook was brilliant. I really did. I felt I was seeing much more of her. Actually, much more of her range, I think, in this than we ever got from her in Doctor Who. So I really was. I was really struck with her performance. Yes, I agree with you that these episodes like this need to be out there, and that points of view need to be put across from, potentially from both sides. It's good to challenge the viewer. I did feel challenged, and as I said, I think I probably will. It's probably an episode that I will feel slightly more comfortable with, or potentially change my view on. I'm not sure if I watched it a second time, knowing where it goes. But overall, it's the weakest of the season so far, and there were unnecessary distractions, I think, and things that just brought me out of the action. So yeah, it's by no means not a good episode. I think it was a good episode, but not at the great heights that we've had in this series so far.
And that's fine. We're only 6 episodes in, so we still got another 19 to go. I think it's 19 or 20.
Wow.
19.
Cool.
So yeah, cool. Okay, so the next episode is Rules of Acquisition.
Rules of Acquisition. Oh yeah. Well, if you hadn't told me that was a Quark episode, that's the only thing it can be. Because he keeps talking about rules of acquisition, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. It's the
I wonder if we're going to get what's his name back? The old Nagel, Arthur Negus, Negus,
Grand Nagus, the Grand Nagus. Yes.
Yeah.
Is it this episode? I think it probably is. Or it might not be this one. Oh, nearly time for your spuds. Is it this one?
Doesn't matter. I'll find out next week.
I think it might be this one. I know he's back this season. He's back every season. He's one of those characters who will have at least one episode a season, I believe.
Yeah.
But so
he went down well with the audience, so presumably they look for opportunities to bring him back from time to time. So
yeah, well, that's it. If someone resonates, they'll be like, oh yeah, Or in more modern TV, it'd be a case of, I don't care if it resonates with the audience. We enjoyed having him there as an actor, so we're going to keep bringing them back. Yeah, that happens a lot in modern TV. Fuck what the audience thinks. We enjoyed ourselves, so we're going to keep indulging it. And the audience are like, oh, not again. Well, maybe that's just me. I get that a lot. I don't know. Anyway. So that was Melora.
Lovely stuff.
We will be back probably next week, all things being equal, for Rules of Acquisition. In the meantime, you can find us on the social medias. The descriptions will be below if you're on YouTube or Spotify.
Cool.
I think that's pretty much us, really, isn't it?
I think it probably is.
Okay, well, in that case, goodbye from me.
And goodbye from him.
Yes, until next week. Bye-bye, Duggan! Okay.